So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. iPhone 17 versus Galaxy S26 4 months later review. So I actually do have the latest iOS 27 beta 2 on the iPhone 17, and it's actually been performing pretty good for a beta update. So I do like it. It actually almost doesn't feel that much different from iOS 26 when it comes to just being like a daily driver software you could use right now. But it is feeling quicker in terms of animations, transitions, and stuff like that. But I want to begin by talking about how these phones have held up. And I gotta say they've been holding up pretty well. To be fair, I haven't dropped them too much whatsoever. But I'm not seeing any scratching around the charge port here on the 17. I'm not seeing any scuffs. The actual camera lenses have held up pretty well over this short 4-month period. But also the aluminum's pretty decent. But if you do drop these on cement, for example, I have dropped them on floors, but not cement or anything like that. They will probably scratch and dent and stuff like that, because those are definitely more harder materials that will probably nick them up pretty good. But you'll see we do have the design that kind of looks a lot like the iPhone 16. Action button on the left. Down here we have the camera control. And generally, I have found the iPhone 17s just feel like a pretty smooth, nice quality device over the past 4 months. Now, the Galaxy S26 over here, they kind of took the shape of the S25, made it a little bit more like the Ultra look here. So the actual shape of this phone feels very S26 Ultra like, but just crammed down into a smaller form factor. But because of this shape, it definitely feels a little bit less, I would say, ergonomic, but still a little bit sharper than the iPhone here in the corners, but not sharp like it's going to hurt your hand or anything like that. But if you like really flat rails, the Galaxy S26 has been pretty darn easy to hold. It's nearly like, if you have a good grip on this, you're not dropping this phone. It has very flat rails, so you don't even really need a case. If you don't care about like having bulk on your phone, just I would say get a skin on this phone. I think it already has pretty good grip because of the flat rails. But generally, this one has held up pretty well also. We don't have really any scratching around the charge port here on this device. On the sides, pretty clean over here. Power button, volume rockers. Off to the left, pretty clean right there. Just a couple antenna lines. And up at the top, a couple microphone holes there. You will see that the camera does stick off the body a bit, just like the iPhone 17. But we do have the triple camera array, which definitely looks a lot nicer this go around without those camera protectors around the edges. It kind of look like camera protectors on some of the previous models. So definitely clean, and both of them have held up extremely well over the past 4 months. All right, guys, so let's talk about thermals now. After 4 months, I gotta say the iPhone 17 has actually been pretty solid, but it has been getting a little bit warm under this beta update here, these beta updates, especially when updating. When it's already like in the phone, it's been pretty fine, and I don't have too much of an issue, especially for daily use. So this A19 chip in here is very efficient. Also, we do have like around 8 gigs of RAM, so pretty good stuff here on this phone, to say the least. And I think it's a really great value base phone because it's held up pretty good in thermals, even though it's not the top level iPhone Max. Now, it doesn't beat those. It will get more warm than those, but it's not anything worse than some of the previous best phones, like an iPhone 16 Pro, for example. So this phone has held up very strong, I would say, in terms of the ability to handle heat. But to be fair, the S26 has done better in this department. I found this phone, for its size, to be handling thermals pretty well. It does have vapor chamber, so this one very strong in this department with good performance. Doesn't really get hot. You will feel some warmness if you have this thing charging while doing a software update, but other than that, the phone has been very strong at not getting toasty, which is really good with the heat waves that occur in the summertime. So definitely, I do think the S26 is very efficient and does a better job even than my iPhone 17 at thermals after the past 4 months of use. So I do like that. And that's going to bring me on to the next area, which we're going to talk about, which is the speaker and audio performance. So when it comes to the speaker crispness, I would say that the Galaxy S26 actually loses this one. The iPhone 17 sounds crispier and more balanced, I would say, at the loudest volumes. Firing out the bottom and up at the top. This one actually sounds better than the iPhone Air, which only has a single speaker, and some people have talked about how that still sounds good, and I agree with you, but it doesn't sound as good as the iPhone 17. So when I am listening to audio daily, whether you're playing a video, it doesn't matter what you're doing, the audio does sound very crispy on the iPhone 17. However, it doesn't get as loud as the Galaxy S26. So if you are looking for a louder speaker out of this phone, out of a phone, this is going to be the one to go with, the Galaxy S26. If you trigger the Dolby Atmos mode, you also do have some customizations that will allow you to change different, let's go ahead and find it here in settings, that will allow you to change between different sound quality and effects. So let's go ahead and click this equalizer here. You can actually change and equalize the audio how you want between bass boost, smooth, dynamic, treble boosting, and more. So having that ability to kind of like tweak your own audio is really cool. I would say also you have different loudness things you can do, like to prevent sudden loudness from the phone. So that's cool. Overall, I gotta say, you can also adapt the sound as well. I gotta say that the Galaxy S26 has been a really strong audio phone, but at its loudest volumes, it can become a little bit tinnier at the max volumes, which I don't really always love. Now, when it comes to software and ecosystems, the iPhone 17 is clearly going to be one of the best if you want like Apple Watch, Mac, iPad, all that stuff. It really does do a really strong and stellar job in that department. However, once the newness wears off of having a new iPhone with the ecosystem, it does get a little bit boring. I mean, it's works in the background of your life, works really well, but it becomes more appliance-like the way it feels day to day. At the end of the day, though, I do got to say that the Galaxy, it kind of still feels like the more fun phone to use here in 2026 because it just has a lot more going on for it. You do combine a lot of features, which can be a little bit overwhelming to some users, but what it can do productivity-wise and the already advanced AI features that are on here, it does feel like it's ahead for sure in a lot of departments. And so I got to say that the software and ecosystems, I still think Apple has the stronger ecosystem in terms of how seamless the products work together. But you do have a very strong offering here with the Galaxy Watch, the Galaxy Buds, their Galaxy tablets, their Windows laptops, the Galaxy Books. So it's kind of like getting very close there. And in general, I think for people who are into productivity and stuff, they're going to like all the feature set that comes here with the Samsung, including their edge panels and more. DeX is included here as well. So it's got a lot on offer that we really just don't find for the iPhone. iOS 27 is pretty fun with the new Siri and stuff, and the Siri included in the camera and all that good stuff, but it's still kind of like not quite as feature packed as the Samsung. So 4 months later, I have to say, once that newness wears off, I'm kind of having a little more fun on my S26. Now, when it comes to daily performance, I find that iOS 27 has actually boosted the performance for the iPhone 17. It feels a little snappier, especially when you're adding controls, when you're swiping through the software. And I'm looking forward to later on updates when they get closer to the GM builds of having even quicker animations. But generally, it's been a really good experience here for performance every day. We do have very, very strong CPU on here with a good amount of RAM, but you get the 12 gigs here for the Galaxy over here. So that gives you more RAM, and the chipset is also high level, just like the S26 Ultra. And so for me, this is like a little powerhouse in your pocket as well. It's just what you can do on a Samsung is definitely more advanced, more multitasking, split screens, DeX, you name it, like it's all here. And you get to actually take advantage of that stuff with the power that the Galaxy S26 does have. So it feels like a really fast, compact phone in the S26, but it's kind of tall. So if you have smaller hands, it will still probably feel like a big phone to you. But the performance gap is kind of being noticeable because Samsung has been working on animations, and it just feels like we have more consistent animations and stuff day to day when I transition between different applications. I do find that I see a little bit more glitching happening on the iPhone, like a little bit weird transition sometimes. Even we are on a beta, but it was doing this on 26 as well, so it's not like it's the beta's fault or anything like that. Samsung definitely has a lot more to do on the phone if you want to talk about advanced features, and the ability to have the performance to back it up is really, really nice. So I gotta say, Samsung S26 is the better performing phone day to day. I just find it to be more consistent when it comes to animations, when it comes to overall like not glitchiness. But the iPhone overall very smooth, but sometimes I think those slower animations kind of can get in the way because they do have like these little weird micro glitches that happen quite frequently when switching between apps and sliding over and stuff. they need to fix some of that stuff. I think it's going to happen later on in this iOS 27, but that remains to be seen. As of now, 4 months later, S26, a little bit more consistent with its performance. So 4 months later, let's talk about the Face ID versus the in-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. So when looking at Face ID, this is just like any other iPhone over the past several years. It's been good. I always thought with this base 17, it would have been awesome to have a fingerprint sensor kind of like in this camera control spot or even in the power button itself, because your finger just rests so nicely on these areas. It would have been so nice to have a fingerprint sensor right there giving us Touch ID. I do think we're going to see something like that on the iPhone folding device that's coming soon. We don't know exactly what it's going to be called, but I do got to say the Face ID is pretty convenient when you are just like trying to swipe and you got your hands wet or whatever like that. But the ultrasonic on the Galaxy S26 has also been quite a dream to use as well. You can also bypass that stuff by just unlocking with your face. I'm not sure I have it set up. I think I'm using only ultrasonic right now. That was on my S26 Ultra, but you can unlock this with your face as well. Not quite as authenticating as the iPhone is. Like, you're not going to be able to authenticate with that and banking apps and stuff of that sort. But you just got to decide which is more useful to you. I think in dark lit situations, ultrasonic is a little bit better. But in a lot of situations where your hands can't be free, I like the convenience of Face ID. One thing I don't like about Face ID on the 17 is I still got to swipe to get into this phone. I wish it could just kind of like bypass that real easily. Let's talk about the battery experience. The battery is generally better on the iPhone 17. It just, for some reason, it doesn't seem to matter if Samsung packs a larger battery. It seems like the 17 still just takes the W. It just lasts longer day to day. So if you're looking for having a little bit longer battery, and with the 17, I really don't even have to trigger low power mode. I mean, I turn it on and I get some 60 hertz action right here, which I don't really love. But if I do turn it on, it lasts even longer. But the thing is that once it indexes and figures out your usage patterns, the efficiency of, Apple controlling the hardware and software with their chip really makes this phone just last and last and last. I'm not saying this thing is a max. It's not. But for a base iPhone, it lasts longer than the base S26 in my experience. Not that this phone doesn't last well. The S26 actually seems to perform a bit better than than the S25 that came before it. But it still needs a charge like around 8-9 p.m. at night. So for me, and this one doesn't. This one usually has about 31 to 33%. I find on the day-to-day, so I can still make it through the night. But this one is pretty darn low. So I gotta say that the Apple's integration still seems a little more efficient when it comes to battery. Maybe Samsung's move to not go to silicon carbon tech yet, giving those larger capacities but still keeping the phone slim, has hurt them currently. But the lithium ion is proven technology, so I understand why when you have a user base as big as Samsung. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe that's costing them because Apple still seems to be ahead in this department. I do want to move on before we get up out of here and talk about a couple more sections to ergonomics. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but one of the things about these two phones is that their shape is like very different. So while they look kind of like the same height, the iPhone has a really rounded edges here. I mean, it's kind of been that way for a while, but it got smoother with these latest editions. Before they were a little bit sharper, like I would say like on iPhone 12, for example. They're a lot smoother, but still rounded. So I think when I think about the human hand, I do feel like the iPhone 17 over these past 4 months just feels like it naturally just sits in the human hand a little bit better than the Galaxy. I feel this phone more in the hand. It feels a little bit wider. Like my brain is thinking more about its shape when I'm holding it. Something little, but ergonomically the reach is a little taller, and I don't love this. It feels like a big phone, small phone, if that makes sense. Like it feels like a big phone in a smaller size, but still feels big. So I'm not a major fan of this. I kind of wish this phone was smaller because we have the Ultras, we have the Pluses for those big phones. I think the S26 just feels a little too big right now. If you have anything like an older S23, S22, you'll know what I'm talking about when you try the S26. It feels like every phone is big now. iPhone 17 to me feels slightly more compacted than the S26, and I do like that. However, it's still a little bit bigger with a 6.3 than the 6.1 we've seen on some previous editions. So this one right here, not quite as small as I like it either, but it definitely feels a little bit easier to manage, mostly because of its shape and a little bit less height than the Galaxy S26. All right, so cameras. The iPhone has one to me in most everyday scenarios with the camera. They also included the Siri camera now within their iOS 27 beta, but The reason why it wins in most everyday scenarios is because its video is like a little bit better consumer grade. I think it's just really smooth, great focus, and that looks really good on social media. So I think most users who have no experience with cameras, the 17 is just better. Also, if you turn it around here, we'll flip it around, back out that camera lens right there. It comes out very wide, something Samsung didn't improve. So generally, I've enjoyed the iPhone 17's camera more. Yes, we do have a few features in here, but you still got to go into settings to get all of the access to all the features. And there's a good amount of zoom, but not quite a lot. It's still 10x only. So yeah, most everyday scenarios, I think the skin tones tend to look a little bit more realistic on the iPhone, but the Galaxy wins in a couple areas that can just blow this phone out of the water, and let's talk about them. So right here, very sharp photos here, but it's the zoom. 30 times zoom. That's 3 times more zoom than the iPhone. So this is the difference between a camera that cannot reach people at a concert and this one can. You could sit in the nosebleeds and reach people better on the Galaxy S26, whereas they're going to look like a blurry, pixelated mess on the iPhone 17. So if you do a lot of zooming, there's no question Galaxy blows that thing out of the water. Also, if you look for higher end video, like 8K, blows that thing out of the water. And that's why I'm talking about for people who are pro users or people who maybe not even pro users, people want to use a little bit more pro features. Galaxy blows that out of the water too with a dedicated pro video mode. So there's just no comparison to the S26 when it comes to those particular features. But if you notice, they're kind of like feature set. If we take a look at the front camera, while it also has a wide angle, it's not as wide as the iPhone. So you're going to back that camera out further to do something. And it's also the same megapixel count they've been using for a while. But generally, these I would say these cameras are definitely competitive. The actual photo results are going to be subjective preference based on how you like processing of images. But I just think the iPhone wins in most everyday scenarios for the person buying this phone because it's a really consumer grade camera and it really doesn't have any real learning curve to it. So for me, that's why the 17 has won it out. But I do think Apple really needs to improve that zoom. And if you need that zoom, it's a no contest. The Galaxy blows the iPhone 17 out of the water. So my final verdict after 4 months in, does the 17 remain the most enjoyable choice in this base segment? And I think yes. I think it remains that way. My 3-month verdict was kind of similar where the 17 had won. But the reason why is because I just feel like this was not really a major update for that base S line. And in some ways, maybe a step back if you like smaller, more compact phones. But generally, it doesn't have the privacy display, the innovative feature of S26 Ultra, so it doesn't feel that compelling in that sense. I just think Apple had the stronger showing this year when it comes to the base model. But the S26 is still competitive. Like it's to me, it's kind of a lazy update, but it's still competitive overall for sure. And definitely in a lot of ways, if you like what Samsung does with the software, you like their productivity suite, like their DeX and all that stuff, it blows the iPhone out of the water in zoom. So there's a lot of areas where it's just no contest and it's going to sound like I'm just making things up. But this is my experience 4 months later. And I think for the everyday actual user of these two phones, I just think this phone just kind of blends seamlessly more into the background of your life in the 17 with a very easy camera setup and a very easy software experience. Whereas the Galaxy, to me, I think because it's like a Samsung, I just always kind of think I want a little bit more. Just because Samsung does a lot, I feel like I want like what the Ultra has on this smaller phone. But that's just me. I feel like this 17 is a little bit closer to the Pro iPhone, whereas this is kind of far behind the Ultra. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. If you have a Galaxy S26, iPhone 17, maybe you had one, you took one back for the other, or you bought one of these and you want to share your experience, drop it down below. Helps people out. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you enjoyed this video, you might like this one as well. I'll catch you on the next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.